If you haven't signed in, please do so. If you signed in the past, no need to. We're just trying to update our distribution list. So please, please check to see if your name appears on one list back there. If not, please print out your information. Thank you. Something else she asked me to do. Oh, no, that's not as good.
Remember to vote on Tuesday.
What was the other thing, Rose?
Remember to vote if you haven't already.
What's that?
Remember to vote.
Oh, remember to vote, yes.
Oh, big, yeah.
Hopefully everyone's already voted. A very, very small percentage of ballots have been tabulated so far from the mail-in voting process, from what I understand. Anyway, with that, we'll call the meeting to order, and one of the other executive board members, Craig, is going to do the land acknowledgement, and then we'll go into our blessing by our chaplain, and then you're done. So, okay, so Craig's not going to do it? Go ahead.
I'm happy to do.
I'm happy to. Oh, she'll do that. She'll do.
Good afternoon, Corina, Siwachmani, Hora. Thank you, Danny. Fan back there? No, good to see you. I am Mexica Wirarica Huichol from an area now known as Zacatecas in Mexico. Back in the days there were no borders and our indigenous people would come up and down the Americas. So honored to be here today to recognize the land upon which we gathered here today, which is known as the Ohlone ancestral homeland of a tribe now known as the Ohlone tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area. So thank you, the Raza Roundtable, for honoring those that came before us and were here before we got here. Thank you.
Thank you. Our chaplain, Chief Matt, please. Thank you, Rose. It's in your faith, please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day, and watch over and protect all those who are traveling during the summer season so that they return home safely. Lord, accept our prayers for our educators and students, and provide those who recently graduated and those preparing for graduation with the wisdom and guidance for a successful future. Heavenly Father, we pray for peace in our world, our country, and our city. And we ask that those who choose to represent us find the strength and courage to bring positive change and make this world a better place. We ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you. A little bit taller than me, so I have to lower that. We're going to do introductions, and these introductions are intended to be time for you to provide your name, your occupation, and your organization affiliation. It is not intended to be an announcement. Those will come at the end of the meeting. So with that, you want to start, Craig?
Sure. Craig Pescola, co-chair of Raza Roundtable, Lucio.
Councilmember Bin 1, District 7. Welcome to District 7.
Dr. Vic Gasta, Dean of Counseling Services and Student Success, Evergreen Valley College.
And you member the Raza Roundtable Executive Board. We just recruited.
Paul Joseph, Chief of Police.
Here's the Water District President. Victor Santos, Vice Chair, Senator Valley Water District.
Elena Robles, just always there.
Tony Vada, District Attorney's Office.
Dennis King, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Greetings, relatives. Gerardo Loera, founder of Northly Indigenous-led Consulting.
Corina Herrera Loera, trustee for the Almrock Union Elementary School District. James Carranza, Dean of Language Arts and Library of Ed and Non-Credit, San Jose City College.
Rene Alvarez, Dean of Student Services at San Jose City College.
Jose Guerrero with Building Group LGBTQ+ Community Center.
Viviendo Independent Police Auditor Office.
Ramiro Rios, cultural broker here at ConXión Community.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Huang. I'm a policy analyst from the Office of Santa Clara County Board President Hora.
Good evening, Mayor Curry Nunez, Advanced Consulting, and I'm on the boards of the San Jose Evergreen Foundation, Kids in Common, Lead Filipino, and Black Leadership Kitchen Cabinet.
Good evening, I'm David Silver, I'm the public defender.
Teresa Castellanos, trustee for San Jose Unified, and also the Office of Immigrant Relations for Santa Clara County.
Eddie Garcia, and I'm Pat.
Danny Garza, chief troublemaker in the east side.
Samo, San Jose Evergreen Community College.
Eric Grasky, board trustee and clerk, Mount Pleasant School District. Also president of Belvedere HOA Mutual Water Company, member of 100 Black Men, Silicon Valley, and candidate for governor of California.
Lori Ramos Chavez of ConXión. Rose Amador, founder, co-founder, co-chair of the Raza Roundtable.
Enrique Flores with DFCS.
Ramon Martinez, La Raza Historical Society.
My name is Ramiro Rios. I work at ConXión to Community as a cultural broker, also known as a cultural intermediary. So I help people connect to local resources within the community for basic necessities, as well as things such as food, employment, if they need to take classes for anger management or family classes, parenting classes. Buen día, mi nombre es Ramiro Ríos. Yo trabajo en ConXión a Comunidad como un intermediario cultural. Lo que hago es ayudo a la gente a conectar a recursos que están aquí mismo entre la comunidad. Pues aquí damos comida, pues ayudamos a la gente a encontrar trabajos, a encontrar recursos por lo que sea de lo que necesitan. Si tal vez necesitan ayuda a encontrar clases de inglés o y conectarse a pues clases de padres igualmente, clases de, por ejemplo, anger management.
Quiero preguntarte, ¿cómo te interesaste en este trabajo, hacer este trabajo?
Me interesé en este trabajo porque pues yo también llego de padres que son inmigrantes y sé que entre este sistema es bien difícil a manejarlo para encontrar cómo se puede uno encontrar su camino entre este país, porque puede ser bien confundido, bien equivocado pues si uno no está acostumbrado a este sistema.
Why did you choose to do this work?
I chose to do this work because I come from parents who are also immigrants, and we have found it difficult to be accustomed to the system and to assimilate and to adjust. So it's good and beneficial to be able to help other families acclimate themselves to this system, and culture that is here as well, and also to have their own culture while adopting this new one, right?
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Marilyn Flores, the president of San Jose City College. Dr. Flores is a distinguished educational leader with more than 25 years of service in the California community college system. Most recently, she served as superintendent and president of Rio Hondo College, and she has also held leadership roles at Santa Ana College, San Diego Canyon College, Las Positas College, and Riverside City College. She is a proud first-generation college graduate and second language learner. Dr. Flores has dedicated her career to advancing access, equity, student success, and community engagement. She has been recognized as an Educator of the Year at the Inland Empire Hispanic Image Awards, and is also a Wheelhouse Fellow from UC Davis. Dr. Flores holds a PhD from UC Riverside, a master's degree from UCLA, and a bachelor's degree from UC Riverside. Please join me in welcoming Dr.
So thank you so much for having me here. I know that I was asked to just come and introduce myself, a little bit about my experience and my background, and then highlight some of the reasons why I feel it's so critical that I'm here with you in unity to advance, our community in education and access. So just briefly, a little bit about myself. My mom is originally from this little town called El Grullo, which is in Limon, Jalisco. She was born there. She went up until like the 3rd grade, and then was basically worked doing laundry and all that stuff. And a lot of things I'm saying is probably similar to some of your background experiences. My father was born in Ensenada. He went up to about 6th grade, and from my understanding, he was a bank teller in Tijuana. They actually met in Tijuana. My mom was a seamstress there, and she was living with my aunt at the time. And so they met there. They had 2 children before me that were both born in Tijuana, and then I was the actual first U.S. citizen born as she ran across the border, and I was born in Chulajuana, which is called Chula Vista. But we call it Chulajuana because it gives you the distance, it's right there. So soon thereafter, they moved over to San Pedro, which is Southern California. And there, they both worked at a factory. And it was interesting because they both worked at Star Casino factory on Terminal Island with a 3rd grade, 6th grade education, and we were able to raise 3 children. What was interesting is that we were low income, but I will tell you that you would never know if we could be ate. So one of the blessings that I always tell students is I love seafood, and I know every single type of seafood, and people think, wow, you must have been raised with money. But it was everything that they caught in the nets for the tuna that they would give the employees. And so I know every single fish, and I have a really good palate because of that, and I think it was a blessing. My dad passed away when I was about 9 years old, and so my mom really did raise us on her own. I'm the youngest of 3. The oldest one went into the military straight from high school to the Army. And then the middle daughter was pregnant about 16 years of age, dropped out. And then later on, she returned to get her GED. And then my brother came back from the military, took advantage of the GI Bill, and then went into law enforcement. And I joke around because I say I have law enforcement both inside institutions and outside, institutions and family. So all walks of life, especially in the area that I grew up in, San Pedro. So fast forward, I was the first to go to college straight from high school, not knowing the pathway, which way to go. I just kind of sort of did it by accident. And as I share with the students, it was just one of those things of asking questions, as a lot of us do. And I would say, do not fear to ask those questions, or else you're not going to figure out how to navigate the system. So did my bachelor's, did my master's, obtained my teaching credential, and my first job, believe it or not, was a 5th grade bilingual teacher. And I did that during a time where bilingual education was getting pretty much eradicated. Literally the first year that I started in bilingual education is when they went into the classrooms and started removing all the primary language textbooks. And I'll never forget it because early on, somebody said I'm the biggest robo-browser. I literally secretly put away some of them, let's just say, and would use them, would make copies and still continue to use them because I knew that everything that I studied about immersion and dual immersion, not necessarily sink or swim, worked. And I knew that if you were bilingual, your cognition levels are higher, and that the ability to be a language broker leads to highly more successful students. So I did that, became tenured and so forth, and then I got tapped to be an administrator. And in my journey to becoming an administrator is how I found my passion with the California Community College system. Ironically, in order to be an administrator, for those who are in K-12, you have to get your Tier 1 and Tier 2 administrative credentials. So I went back to school to apply for that. And they told me, you can apply for a fellowship. We have a full fellowship that you can apply to your Tier 1 credential, and you can get your PhD as well. I don't know what this is, right? I heard the word ship. In my head, scholarship, right? So I said, sure. So I remember applying, and this was with the Hispanic Border Leadership Institute and with the Kellogg Foundation. And they had come together, and they wanted to fund an entire cohort of Hispanic students to finish a PhD in 3 years. They wanted to prove that if you removed any financial barriers away, that you could get the Hispanic students to complete in 3 years, mind you. If any of you know, PhDs do not take 3 years. They take about 6 to 10 years, but this was what they proposed. And so it was called Hispanic Board Leadership Institute because they partnered up with 4 states. So it was California, New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. And so we had cohorts in each of the states. So I remember that was, I would say, the first time that I truly felt who I was and my identity. Because I had never experienced such discrimination, such judgment as I had in that program because of my background, my experience, my push. During that time, we had all these, anti-immigration policies, Prop 107, 127, all of them that were coming out. And all my research work was based on that. And I'll tell you, it was a struggle because I had to abandon that because I wanted, at the end of the day, to get that piece of paper so that I could make a difference because it wasn't accepted research. I had never experienced that. Every ism is what, sorry about that. And so fast forward, I finished my doctorate, and that's when I got picked up by the California Community College System. And since that day, I have never left the system. So I have about 30 years in the educational system, and the majority have been in the California Community College System because of my passion and belief of what we do for our community. So fast forward, I worked my way up in different positions with the same premises, that I was going to do my job to the best of my ability to make sure that we focused on inclusion, accessibility, and social justice through education. Because that is the only way that I got to this place was through education. And so I had some scars because it wasn't always what the mission or the vision of leadership was. And sometimes, and I always tell our Latino and our students of color, we need to stick together. We need to stick together and uplift each other. And unfortunately, far too many times, we push each other down to move up. And this is something that I always tell our youth that we have to really uplift because some of the struggles that I've had have been by our own people. And that hurts. And so fast forward, I continue to have upward mobility. I've had a good network of professionals, partnership with different organizations, and something that I was sharing with the students at the graduation was that I am your first Latina president at San Jose City College, and it's more than 100 years history. That's huge. It's great when I found out, so honestly, I didn't even realize that. I had made an assumption that how could I be the first Latina with an institution that has more than 50% Latino? I was pretty shocked when the chancellor told me, by the way, did you know? And I'm like, are you kidding? That's a huge weight on me, and that just adds another layer that I need to make sure that, I talk that and I speak that, because we need to get better at this, right? So I come to you with my philosophy that my responsibility is to bring the college to the community and bring the community to the college. And so as I heard all your titles and your organizations, please know that this is me reaching out to you as well to figure out ways in which we can continue to partner, to make sure that we are uplifting our community through social or economic mobility by bringing education to them or bringing them to the college. And by this I mean if you have business opportunities for our students to do internships, if you have a need in your business for reskilling, we can bring courses to you. If you have an opportunity to create partnerships for fundraising and for philanthropy to empower our students. We have a huge, underrepresented population that has a lot of food insecurity, housing insecurities, and if it wasn't for a lot of the partnerships that we have, I look right now, we have Martha's Kitchen next door. If it wasn't for them, some of our students would not have a meal. So we're really embedded within the community, but I think we can do even better. We have excellent partnerships right now, and it just gives me pride to be the president there because we're doing amazing work, but there's so much more opportunity out there by making these connections and making sure that we're uplifting each other, working together, and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the community. So I want to thank you for having me here. And if you ever need me to come out and update you on anything, right now, I'm 4 months old at the college. It feels like 5 years, I keep saying that. We've been undergoing a lot of changes, but I will tell you that, we're really taking a hard look at our outcomes, knowing that we can do better. So we are engaging in the next 3 to 5 years in a lot of strategic, intentional planning to make sure that we are offering viable courses that do lead to employment for our students, that we are strategically, again, and with intentionality, providing advisement to our students so that they can succeed, that they are pathways that mean something, that they are not, ending with a degree that leads to no employment, and that we're being responsive to industry. Right now, everything that's switching so quickly, we know that our student population is going to look different. It's not going to be straight from high school. It's going to be individuals that are potentially being laid off and have to come to get reskilled. And we're there. I was saying the other day, we had a graduation. Our youngest graduate was 13 years old, and our oldest was 78. And that just tells you the range of where we are when we're ready to meet our community where they're at. And if we don't have a course, we will create a course because we have that capacity. And these are courses that are industry demand based or courses that are articulated with Cal States or the UCs or the privates. And we can, the process takes a while, but we can do that. And so I want to thank you for letting me be here, and it's an open invitation. And I want to thank the 4 district supporters that are here. It takes a team, it takes a village, and I look forward to ongoing partnerships to make sure that we build up and elevate our community.
Do we have any questions?
Dr. Flores, thank you for fighting for our immigrant communities through education. And that's how we leverage, the living costs here by education. I know that AI is coming and none of us are going to escape it. The question is, how do we leverage AI in order to upskill, reskill our workforce? My understanding of AI is going to create about 170 million jobs throughout the world. And if we don't leverage it and we don't get that piece of a pie, other city, county, state, or country will leverage it. And what is the city college doing in order for us to educate our younger generation, including our older adults as well, to leverage AI to upskill or reskill?
So it's interesting having a lot of conversations lately on that topic. And one thing is, yes, AI is going to create a lot of jobs, but there's tons of people that are losing jobs because of AI. And so 2 things. One is I was literally just having a conversation with our marketing department that we need to also look at what jobs require that human touch that will never ever be replaced by AI. And typically it's your essential workforce, your healthcare, law enforcement, daycare, childcare services. That has to have that human touch. So we're looking at ways, dental hygienist programs. I'm just talking about programs that we offer, right? Construction technology, those jobs are not going away. HVAC's not going away. So how do we leverage those programs and add additional courses, add additional entry points, add opportunities for reskilling for those that don't have space for AI or cannot reskill to that, right? So that's one aspect. The other is, what are we doing right now with AI? So we actually have a faculty member who literally today said, can I sit down and meet with you for about 30 minutes and let you know he has a seat at the table with the California Community College System about what we're doing with AI. So we are looking at programmatically how do we infuse AI within and across all courses so that our students are prepared of the use of AI within their field of study. The other is, and I'm looking over both things, I mentioned both of them, we need to educate our students on how to responsibly use AI. We need to be very transparent about that, because if not, they're going to fail miserably at how to responsibly use AI. Because if you recall, back in the days when Google came out, when people were doing Google searches, the information is only as good as what exists. And back in the days, when Google came out and all of these search engines came out, there was a lot of bias in the data. There was a lot of untruths. There was a lot of things that were not correct. And now here comes the second wave. So if we're going to be talking about AI enhancing it, we also need to educate our students and our staff, everybody across the board, about how do you responsibly use AI so that it doesn't become a crutch. The typical things we're also looking at, if you saw in the news, Deanza has like an AI certificate that they built. We're looking more at across the level. You know, how is industry using it so that we can infuse it within those programs and studies. So if it's, let's say it is HVAC, maybe they are using it for something, how do we incorporate that aspect? So it's across the board, and it's not like you have to degree now in AI. You really need to be able to use AI in your industry, your work environment, your classroom environment, classify, you know, even my own assistant, I was like, hey, you guys have to take a couple minutes, data dump them into AI, and it just saves you so much time. But again, how do you do that responsibly, right? The other is we have to be very, very careful in the California Community College system because you cannot use AI and input any of our information that's student protected. And I'll give you an example. We had you should probably something new as well. You have some colleges that were using the AI feature to say the names of the students. It did go well, but in addition to that, there was one institution where the chancellor, I believe, went up there and gave a speech and just said, just so you know, that was all created by AI. And the person had mentioned individuals by student names, and they had said this person is undocumented and came, blah, blah, blah. So now there's this added layer of fear, right? What information is put into these systems is now out there. So we have a large population of undocumented students, our affinity groups, LGBT communities, people that are scared, genuinely scared, as they should be, because they're under attack. They're worried about what are we putting into AI. Again, responsible use. So those are the types of things that we're doing faculty to make sure that whatever you're putting in there, whatever you're using AI for, you need to know it now becomes public and the realm of everything. So there's a lot of aspects to that that we really need to enhance it, but we need to do it responsibly, intentionally, and we need to protect our students. I know that was long.
No, it was a great answer, thank you.
Enrique, please.
Yeah. I'm not sure if there's a think tank that has looked at what we learned from COVID, and given that CDC has, really downsized, is there a way for us to prepare the workforce for a potential future pandemic so that we learned a lot there also, that we don't repeat the same mistakes of folks just losing their job within, a day and couldn't go back to work and then couldn't figure it out at that point. So maybe infusing that in future planning.
Yeah, and I think I really want to say I think the California Community College did a really good job at the systems of that. I still remember the day of having to pivot and everything had to go online, and having to protect and PPEs. And I was even at an institution where we had a vaccination on site. We had lines and lines, and we became a pod, and we worked with law enforcement. And we have the ability to pivot, and I think in a good manner, that when situations come up like that, we typically will have a solution. I think right now, though, we're still dealing with the aftermath. One of the examples was a lot of, especially in this region, a lot of childcare centers shut down. And now we have a shortage in childcare services. So we're responding to that in the sense that we have partnerships with agencies to do certificates for early child development so that we can open up more slots, open up more spaces because of the shortage. So it's almost like we're having to pivot back and forth post-pandemic, but also be aware that something else could happen. And I'll give you an example of something that what we're having right now, the fraud and the cybersecurity breaches that we have, fraudulent students. That's a huge thing. We're having to pivot our processes and systems. Just the other day, our major platform for our students to go online was hacked across the entire state of California. We had to pivot again. So we're already talking about what other formats can we continue to teach our students. So, because we're such a large system, and if we continue to have these across the state conversations, we come up with solutions. And that's why, again, my passion for the California Community College system, I can't even ever leave it behind, because we will always meet the demand where it's at. And that's through the support of the state.
Thank you. While the mic's still back there, we'll come back to you.
Welcome to San Jose, Dr. Flores. It sounds like you've had a lot of experience in a lot of colleges. One of the, I hope you can tell us a little bit about, from looking at programs, because one of the most fundamental issues that I've worked with and others is the kids are very stereotyping. The students at community college are everything from 40 to 30 to returning moms to young people. And some of them are headed to 4-year BAs, some of them are headed to technical or professions. What are some programs you see that maximizes them getting whatever they get from you and move on, so they don't spend 4 or 5 years floating around, then spend 5 more years floating around somewhere else? You know, moving them into the different kinds of better work and world that they're going to be part of.
And that's the work that I'm talking about, that we're going to be engaging in the next couple of years. We need to be more intentional in the entire district. So what's really, one of the reasons why I accepted this job was because when I met with the chancellor, her vision of making sure that we are one district, one team. Because the college, EBC and SJCC, were almost operating as if they were independent colleges, but we share a lot of students. Some students come take classes at City College, they're pre-nursing courses, but we don't have nursing, so they go to EBC for nursing. So we swirl a lot of students, but there's so many times that we make it very difficult because we don't schedule things the same. So to your point, we're kind of shopping for this class over here and that class over there, and then we're not offering the classes intentionally that's on their pathways. So some of them are sitting around waiting for that class to be offered, and then we find out, well, it hasn't been offered in like 3 years. So that student's sitting there. So we're very much aware of this, and we've been running a lot of data, and we have support from our academic senate, we have support from our unions, which is a great place to be, and we have support from the district office to allow us to engage in this conversation so that we can do exactly what you're saying. Plan students' educational pathways so that they can complete them in a timely manner and ensure that when they complete, there's a viable job out there. Because we also have a lot of old curriculum that's no longer industry standard based. We look at some of our labs, we need to elevate our equipment because when they go into the real workforce, that's not the same equipment. So we're really focusing on an entire overhaul and review of all of our programs. It's going to take a while, but it needs to be done so that we don't have students that have 90 units and then finally transferring, and that comes at a cost to them. So we want to make sure that they're transferring, they need their 60 units, that they complete them and they're transferring, because otherwise they're going to leave at a higher cost. We also want to make sure that if there's a certificate that they complete. And a lot of this has to do with having to make sure we have enough counselors, so that students are getting advised, so they're not just guessing, picking, but that we're also responsive, so that what's based on student demand, we then schedule classes, and not just random classes, like, oh, this teacher wants to teach this class, therefore they're going to get it. Is it on a student's pathway? So there's going to be a lot of intentionality. It takes a lot of work, but having it done at other institutions, it works. And we have very smart, excellent students at our college. But our completion rates are not excellent. We are going to elevate those because it's not that they can't complete because they're not smart enough. They can't complete because our system is not working for them. And that's what we're working on. And the thing that I really appreciate is that we're all having these conversations, and as hard as it is to say we're kind of broken, that's what we need to do, and we're all there. We're all saying we need to fix this. How do we fix this? So I'm really excited about what's to come. It's going to take a lot of work, but like I said, we have buy-in from every single constituency group, and we know it's going to take us a while, but we will increase our completion. We will be able to say how do we impact living wages, and we will be able to respond to the community. I'll let you go. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for being here. My name is Elena Robles, and I've been in education for 55 years. And I taught at City College for quite a long time, too, and Evergreen for a long time. My question is, in this climate of political and financial volatility, what do you see coming in as a new person with fresh eyes as your greatest financial challenges for the college for this next 2 years?
You know, we just had, right before I came, we had a deficit that we had to narrow the gap. I can tell you that, knock on wood, the district addressed it, so we're now stable financially. The challenge to that is that when you're stable, you have to maintain stable, and there really is not an opportunity to grow. Because we're basic aid, we have a set budget. We're not funded through the funding formula that allows you to grow. So it becomes that's the challenge. So to give you an example, non-basic aid districts get a per pupil cost, like the K-12s, for every student we have. So it's like $6,000 for one MTS for students, right? So as you grow, you get more money when the state has money for growth. So with us, because we're basic aid, we have a set budget. So we have to maintain with that. So if we want to grow in an area, where are we going to cut? So it's playing this game, a balancing game of where do we want to put our dollars? Because we need to be able to say, you know what, this program is no longer viable, and we need to reinvest it so that we make sure that we have an ROI, return on investment, by having leaders and individuals that contribute to the workforce. So that's going to be the challenge, is trying to figure out how do we grow in the right areas without it coming at a higher cost. Those are definitely going to be the challenges for the next 2-3 years.
So you see cutting as as your only option?
No, it would be pivoting. It would be restructuring the budget, right? So if there's an area that's not doing so well, that we maintain services in another area, another program area. Yeah. So we won't be cutting because we're based right now. We're already done with the structural deficit that we had, which is great. So we're at the level playing field right now, where if we want to say we want to grow in an area, I need to figure out where is that coming from. But given that, you know, hopefully, if the administration changes, we'll be able to return to the old days where the state was able to give us additional federal dollars and state dollars. And that's our challenge. I will tell you though that even with the federal cuts that we had that were going to impact us at City College, we were able to, through this process of redirecting dollars, individuals like vacancies and so forth, we were able to redirect those dollars to replace the federal funding so that we can continue to serve our students that were impacted as we're a minority student institution at HSI. So, you know, hopefully, you know, pray that the presidential election comes to flourish differently to where it supports us getting those federal dollars back and saving some of the state funding that we've lost. That will be huge. If that happens, then there's room for growth and opportunity there.
I'm going to have to cut the questions off because we have another speaker, but if we would be able to stay so they can ask questions later. Thank you. I know All right. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, which is Eddie Garcia, a friend and he's still a community activist. He's involved in so many things. He has a successful career in government, business, education, and community development. After a massive heart attack in 2010, Eddie embarked on a fight for his life. He used the power of hope to overcome a decade of living with heart failure. A successful heart transplant in 2020 inspired him to publish his memoir, Summers in the Waiting Room, Faith, Hope, and Love. He's also an author of the Mexican Heritage Plaza, a symbol of resilience, perseverance. Eddie lives in San Jose with his wife Sandra. They have 2 adult daughters. Eddie served in the education community at East Side Union High School District. Board of Trustees from 2006 to 2010, including term as Board President in 2010. During his tenure at Eastside Unified High School District, he spearheaded the A to G initiative, and unfortunately I don't know what that's about, but he'll maybe touch on that a little bit. A policy that made college entrance requirements the district's default curriculum. Excellent curriculum. Let's see. He also led an effort to save after-school sports programs during the 2006-2009 recession. He is co-founder of Latino Leadership Alliance, a leadership academy established in collaboration with Stanford University's Center for Comparative Study of Race and Ethnicity. In 2011, Eddie was inducted to the Eastside Unified School District Hall of Fame. He is a recipient of the California for Justice Award and NAACP Freedom Fighters Award. Please join me in welcoming Eddie.
Thanks, Raul. Man, it's been a long, long time.
Yes, it has.
Yeah. I got a story to tell you. And I hopefully I tell it in this book. This is what I plan to do for the next 10, 15 minutes or so, is I'm going to read the prologue to the book, or parts of the prologue to the book, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the story in the book, and take questions. So if that's okay with everybody, let me get started with a little reading here. The prologue. September 9th, 1999 was a beautiful day in San Jose, California. A large crowd gathered for the dedication of the Mexican Heritage Plaza, the city's most ambitious neighborhood cultural arts project. Although the first day of autumn was less than 2 weeks away, clear skies, a light breeze, and a comfortably 74 degrees blanketed the plaza. There was a sense of excitement, accomplishment, and relief that this day had finally come. It was as if the gods conspired to create a perfect day for the much anticipated consecration of a living, breathing monument to the city's Mexican origins. When the 1,000 or so people settled into their seats, Santa Clara County Supervisor Blanca Alvarado stood and walked up to the few steps to the stage to address the gathering. The audience included San Jose's political class, community activists, neighborhood leaders, and other guests. When she approached the podium, Alvarado opened her comments with equal parts passion and eloquence. She said, "To be here with you at this official dedication is to stand in awe and wonder at what we have accomplished in the spirit of community. To stand here is to feel free at last from the stinging rejection that so many of us have felt for being Mexican Americans. To be able to speak our language and to experience our cultura in its many forms is to claim our right to be." With that opening flourish, Alvarado brought to life the city's Mexican roots, which white Americans had dismissed since their arrival in the late 1840s. Through the 20th century, the handful of historians who wrote about San Jose's history ignored the ethnic Mexican experience. While historians erased ethnic Mexicans from published historical works, the Mexican community of San Jose continued to thrive. Beginning in the early 1950s, ethnic Mexicans unsuccessfully attempted to establish a cultural center to celebrate the city's Mexican birthright. Proposals from the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s faced institutional roadblocks, financial challenges, and community divisions. Ultimately, none of these projects emerged beyond the ideal phase. Despite efforts by generations of San Jose's ruling class to marginalize the contributions of ethnic Mexicans to the city's development, a group of Mexican-American civic leaders overcame seemingly impossible odds in the 1990s to build a state-of-the-art Mexican cultural center that would become a symbol of Mexican-American resilience and perseverance. And that's the end of the book. And that introduces the book. So, I've got my little outline right here. So I'm a San Jose State trained historian. I studied history at San Jose State under, I think, one of the best research and methods professors that was ever at San Jose State. And Raul talked about my career, and I didn't teach, and I didn't write history. I did a whole bunch of other things. When I had a chance to write my first book, my memoir about my heart journey, I used all those skills I used in the history department to stitch together the story. Because the story takes place in the summer of 2010, and I spent most of that summer in a coma. So I had to use those historical research and method skills to come up with the story. When I had the opportunity to write this book, and I want to thank Dr. Martinez and the La Raza Historical Society for having the confidence in me to write this book and publish this book. I knew I could use those study skills that I learned in college to write an actual historical book. So this book is not just, and I don't mean to minimize that, it's not just a series of oral stories about, oral history about the Mexican Heritage Plaza. I interviewed between 20 and 40 people, and I connected those stories with the actual documentary evidence to put together this story. So this book is a bona fide historical study of how this facility came to be. Now, does everybody in here know where and what the Mexican Heritage Plaza is? Right. It's a $35 million facility, and those are in mid-1990 dollars, on the corner of Allen Rock and King Road, and in the heart of San Jose's working class Latino neighborhood. Now just think about that. Think about that today, to get the city to make that kind of investment in that neighborhood. It's stunning when you think about it. It's stunning. And so what I did to start this story is I wanted to lay down the foundation of who Mexicans are in San Jose. One of the first things historians do as they start preparing their work is to do a study of past historical works on the subject. So the subject here is San Jose. And San Jose has been around for almost 250 years as a civil city. But there's very little written about it. In fact, there's one book that's considered the definitive history of San Jose. It's called The History of San Jose, written by a man named Clyde Arbuckle in 1985. So let me tell you some of the things that Clyde Arbuckle did not include in his book. We'll start with the first thing. Arbuckle claims that the Spanish founded San Jose in 1777. Technically, that is correct. This area was under the governmental body of the King of Spain. What he didn't write was that the 66 settlers who actually settled here on November 29, 1777, were all from Mexico. All 66 were born in modern-day Mexico. Sonora, Sinaloa, Jalisco, Puebla, Mexico City. The Spanish captain, the soldier who led the expedition, was born in somewhere near Tucson, Arizona today, which was Sonora and Mexico. And guess what? So was his father and his grandfather. So there's a historian from the 1920s who came up with this concept called the Spanish heritage fantasy. And California is a perfect example of Spanish heritage fantasy, because Californians wanted the community to believe that California and all of its cities began at the American era. But when people realized, well, no, it's been here longer than that, they created this Spanish heritage fantasy, that the Spaniards found this place. But the fact of the matter is, it's not true. 66 pobladores settled on the banks of the Guadalupe River on November 29, 1777, and they were Mexicanos. They were ethnically Mexican.
And indigenous.
And indigenous, that's right, from Mexico. That's right. So that's the first thing that Arbuckle didn't tell us. The second thing he didn't tell us is that the first major industry in San Jose was run by Mexicanos. And I tell the story of one man. His name is José Antonio Chaboya. For those of you who know where Chaboya Middle School is, his ranch was right in the Chaboya Middle School is like in the center of his ranch. He was the largest landowner in San Jose's history, I believe. I've looked far and wide to see if there's any private landowner that owns more land than him. He had 24,000 acres that was granted by the Mexican government. He was born in the Pueblo de San Jose. He was baptized at the Santa Clara Mission. His parents were born in Michoacan and Sinaloa, as were their parents. So the largest landowner in the history of this city is a Mexican-American man. He ran the biggest cowhide and tallow trade in the world. He traded his hides and tallows. Ships would come in from Europe, from back east, to buy his stuff at the San Francisco Bay. But it didn't turn out very well. There was this little law when the United States came into being called the California Land Act of 1851. Here was the purpose of that law. When Americans came for the gold rush and they found no gold, they said, hey, I heard you could plant a lot of stuff down there in that valley. So they came down here to start planting, and they set up shop, they put fences, but they were on someone else's land. They were squatters. So when California became a state, a U.S. Senator from California created the California Land Act of 1851 to solve that problem. Well, guess how the problem was solved? Chaboya ended up losing 90% of his land. He had to sell land to pay lawyers. He had to sell his land to the squatters that were already there, so he didn't have to pay more lawyers. So when it was said and done, he ended up with 2,200 acres, he and his family. Here's another thing, and Arbuckle does not mention one thing about that in his book. Here's another thing that Arbuckle doesn't mention. The second biggest industry in San Jose was the quicksilver mining industry. Up here in South Almaden Hills, it was quicksilver mining. Here's real quick what quicksilver is. It is it's a chemical that helps clean gold off of rocks and dirt. And it was during the gold rush. So somebody made a lot of money. But guess who mined all that stuff? 90% of the miners came from Sonora. Some came from Chile, but 90% came from Sonora. And when the Americans finally bought the mine, things got worse for them. Can I see a little pattern going on here? So let me tell you one more story that's further into the future. That when I was doing the research, I was stunned, but excited about. During the mid-century here in San Jose, there was a robust, middle-class Mexican-American Latino community. Shop owners, barbers, doctors, dentists. They lived in their own community west of Market Street. It was a bustling, humming community. They had 3 dance halls. They had major acts from Mexico coming in, from Cuba and other parts of the Latin American world. They had 4 or 5 movie theaters, the first-run movies from Mexico and Latin America. They lived quietly in their community. The other side of Market Street was the other downtown San Jose, where the major department stores were, where the white folks lived. Well, as you all know, during the late 60s and early 70s, there was white flight during major cities in the United States, and it happened right here in San Jose too. People started moving out to the suburbs, so San Jose's downtown, not the Mexican downtown, San Jose's downtown started to die. So the city council decided, as early as 1962, to redevelop downtown so it could be this robust downtown again. And guess what they did? They completely tore down the Mexican community. Gone, mowed it down. So today, you see the Center for Performing Arts, the Children's Discovery Museum, Tech Museum, the Fairmont Hotel. All of that stuff used to be Mexican neighborhoods. And Market Street was a thriving Mexican-American downtown. So what's the common thread in all these stories? Here's what the common thread is. Every time the Mexican-American and Mexican community in San Jose got a boost up, the structurally racist community brought us right back down. So I had said in the prologue that beginning in the 50s, the community wanted to create their own cultural center. There was an organization called la ConXión Herencia Mexicana, which was a part of the Mexican consulate. And they came up with an idea to build a cultural center. So they bought a house near the old Del Monte plant. And they bought some property, but they couldn't raise the money to make it happen, so it never continued. In the 1960s, the president of that organization printed in El Excentrico magazine. I don't know if those of you are old enough to remember the Excentrico. It was a little magazine about this big. Dr. Ramon Martinez likes to call it the Facebook of the Latino community. I'm not making a mess here. The Facebook of the Latino community. And he wrote in Excentrico this grand vision for a Mexican village that was going to have a town square, a church that anchored the town square, and shops and arts and culture that never left the pages of the magazine. And then in the 1970s, a group of Mexican-American businessmen created something called the Mexican-American Chamber of Commerce. And they wanted to come up with an Olvera Street type venue downtown. And they got a little attention from the city. As a matter of fact, the first Latino, first Mexican-American ever elected to the San Jose City Council was a man named Al Garza. And Al Garza said, yes, I'm going to support you. But they couldn't go any further than that. The city said, nah, we don't want to do that. And the idea died. So, in 1980, things started to change. For the first time in history, San Jose had what's called district elections. That's what we have today. The council member represents District 7. Before 1980, it was an at-large election system, which meant that everybody in the city voted for the city council. And I ran some numbers, and up until 1980, 84%, I'm going to say that again, 84% of city council members elected in San Jose came from the Rose Garden and Willow Cliff.
White males.
Yeah, all white.
So the movement to change to district elections started in East San Jose. Because they're saying, we don't even have street lights, we don't even have paved roads. We need representation. So they created this huge movement that gathered steam nationwide, citywide. In 1978, the voters agreed and said, yes, let's do it. 1980 was the first election, and the second Latino/Latina, and the first Latina Mexican-American to be elected to the city council was a woman named Blanca Alvarado. 7 years after Blanca took office, she and the mayor of San Jose, his name was Tom McHenry, came up with this idea to have cultural gardens throughout the city, like the Japanese Japanese Friendship Gardens. A place where each of the community's cultures could celebrate in a gardens, park-like setting. And in their memo in 1987, they said, we're going to start with the oldest community, the Mexican-American community, and the newest, which was the Vietnamese community. Those are going to be the first two cultural gardens to come up. So Blanca gathered a group of people and community leaders, and I interviewed a few of those people that were at the very, very beginning. And one of the first things they said, which is straight up Raza, we don't want any meditative gardens like the Japanese Friendship Gardens. We want a place where we could have music and food and dance and color. So they said, we got another idea. And the fight was on. So what happened then was from 1987, when the idea came up, until 1999, 12 years, there was this struggle, both internally and externally, to bring the Mexican Heritage Plaza to life. It started as a gardens project where the city, or the redevelopment agency of the city, would contribute $6 million, and the community created an organization called the Mexican Heritage Corporation, needed to raise $3 million. We're talking early 90s. That's a lot of money. When I talked to a lot of the founders, they were telling me they didn't think that the city thought they could really raise that money. But they did. And there's a fantastic story about how they raised the first $1 million. And I don't know if I have time, but it's a fantastic story. And I'll get back to that in a second. So they raised the $3 million. So now the city's like, oh boy, we gotta do something. Well, it went from a gardens and a plaza to we need a gardens, a plaza, and classroom space. And then we need a gardens and plaza and gallery space. And we need a theater, a full theater. Oh, and we need this community hall where people can have events. If you can all picture those things in your mind right now, those were coming, they were coming ideas in like crazy. So there was 3 major problems with all this. A, the city's redevelopment agency, which was going to post the most money. Remember, they started at 6. Just for the record, they finished with $32 million. They fought every inch of the way not to do this. So there was a lot of internal institutional problems. I go through it in detail using documentary evidence like memos, letters, newspaper articles, and they fought it tooth and nail. The second group that was causing them some problems was within our own community. Our own community put up a big fight, a big fight. And what they did is they solicited the support of a Latino columnist, and he took and ran with it. So between the years 1992 and it opened in 1999, or actually late 1998 is when the city finally allocated the last $25 million. It was a day-to-day fight to maintain the structure and maintain the vision of the plaza. It's a fascinating story, and it's an amazing story. It's a story of resilience, it's a story of perseverance, and it's a story too, and I say this in the book, of the Latino community turning the paradigm of accessing public resources upside down. Because up until that point, at least in San Jose, the way to get resources was to protest, was to march, and get on people's cases until we forced them to give us something. This organization, led by Blanca and the leaders of the Mexican Heritage Corporation, turned that model upside down. They used their political skill, their political relationships, their knowledge of the system to get supermajority of the city council to vote for $32 million they gave. And it's a fantastic story. And I don't know if I have about a minute and a half, I just want to tell this quick story, because this is a great story. So I'm going to tell you the story about how it was told to me, the oral history. And then I'll tell you a little bit about my research journey to find out the truth. Right? So here's the story. Mexican Heritage Corporation has to raise $3 million. Where are they going to get that? So they do like a capital campaign, and they raise 33,000. They got a long way to go, right? They got a long way to go. So they get PG&E to pony up 50 grand. Ooh, that's a big check. That's $83,000. They got a long way to go. So using their political understanding of how the system works, they decided to ask Congress for an earmark. Do you all know what an earmark is? Some people derisively call it pork. That's a big chunk of money that Congress members have, and it comes out of a certain committee that they pass it out like playing cards to bring home what they call bring home the bacon to the community. Bridges, huge parks, stadiums, all those things have pork money. In fact, San Jose International, the Norman Mineta San Jose International Airport, Norman Mineta, who's a member of Congress, got a lot of federal pork for the airport. And so the Mexican Heritage Corporation just thought, let's give this a try. So They did. They asked Congressman Mineta and Congressman, a guy named Don Edwards at the time, can you help us get some pork, right? And so it was Don Edwards' district, and Don Edwards, it's actually the district that's represented by Zoe Lofgren now. And Zoe Lofgren was one of his staff members, by the way. And so Don Edwards said, I'll carry the bill, but you all have to do one thing. He told Blanca, you need to go to Washington, D.C. and meet with the chairman of the subcommittee on urban housing and urban development. That's what the pork was. HUD. And so, so Blanca takes the executive director of the Mexican Heritage Corporation with her, and they go to Washington, and they're nervous. And I spoke to both of them. They're the ones that told me the story. They were nervous. Blanca had those of you that know Blanca, she's super eloquent, super articulate, super passionate. So she had her rap down about how she was going to convince the chairman this was important. And the executive director crunched all the numbers. I'm making a mess of it here. That's what happens when you're Latino Mexican American. So crunched the numbers. They had everything in place to meet this congressman. They get there. His name is Louis Stokes. He's an African American veteran, seasoned Congress member from Cleveland, Ohio. He actually created the Black Congressional Caucus, and he was the chair of the subcommittee on assassinations for Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy. This is a big dog in Washington. And so Blanca and the executive director, his name is Pete Gallego, walk into the chairman's office. They're ready to go with their little rap, their program. They're getting ready to rock and roll it. And Blanca starts talking, and the congressman politely interrupts her and says, I know why you're here. And if Mr. Edwards and Mr. Mineta want this, consider it done. Oh, by the way, y'all want to take a picture? So I thought it was a beautiful story. So I tracked it down, and sure enough, I found Louis Stokes. I found the committee's documents for the year 1992-93, and the committee signed the bill. I put the bill to the President of the United States, George H.W. Bush at the time, and he signed the HUD subcommittee bill, and the Mexican Heritage Corporation got $1 million for the Mexican Heritage Plaza. They turned that whole thing upside down, and they made it work for the community. It's an amazing story. If you haven't bought the book, you gotta buy it. It's a little wet once in a while. But that's it. And I'm just, I want to thank Dr. Martinez and the Historical Society again for having the confidence in me to tell this story, because it was an amazing journey for me. It was an amazing journey.
Anyone have any questions for Eddie? Okay, well, be brief, please.
Madam Trustee. Thank you so much for telling us the story and also writing a book. That's where I met my lovely husband in the ceremony. That's where we got married, and that's where I feel like we lived half of our life with all of the events there. A question, and I don't know if it's in the book, I look forward to reading it. I want to keep the highlight because Mexican Heritage Plaza is an amazing place. And I also, as a current leader in my community, continuing and knowing that I come from, giants like Blanca Alvarado and all the others that open doors, including Picarillo, that they both continue to do so much. But knowing, and knowing that we had that money, that we had that corporation. I was young at the time, but I also know that we had matzah and we had all of these things, right? I'm not saying anything that y'all don't know, those of you that have been here before. I also know that something happened, and so I don't want to go over what happened. I think what I want to learn, because last time we had a big win for the East Side community as well, to reopen matzah. And so I want to learn from what happened, and I don't expect you to answer it, but maybe in the future, so that we don't let Mexican Corporation die again, places like matzah close again, that leaders in our community ensure that nothing like that, when we have assets like that, that we never let them close down on behalf of our future generations.
That's great. I can answer that, kind of. And here's what it is. The book ends on September 9th, 1999. That's the grand opening of the plaza. But I do an epilogue, about a 6-page epilogue. Pretty much kind of like what's happened since. And there's a very fascinating story, and I'm going to go through it quickly now. So, and by the way, I need to point out Elena Robles, by the way. I'm not ignoring you, Elena, I just have to do it at the right time. Elena was the executive director at one time of the Mexican Heritage Plaza in the Mexican Heritage Corporation. So, right. Now, I wasn't ignoring you, Elena. I was trying to fit it in.
I feel ignored, Eddie. I have 2 stories to tell you afterwards that I think might be a nice little nugget.
Okay, so here was, as the building was starting to get built, and there's momentum on building the buildings, there was a lot of discussion in the city council about how to pay for maintenance and operations. Right, because that's a big chunk of it. And the city hired a consulting firm from the East Coast. And the guy's name was Thomas Wolfe. He had a little bow tie and tweed. You know, he thought he was bad, and he probably was in the bigger circles.
And in the East Coast.
And he didn't get along with anybody. But as I was doing my research, I was looking through his report. He recommended that the city contribute $2.4 million over 5 years until the corporation got on its feet. And the city refused. The city said, you're on your own now. And if anybody works in nonprofit, you know that maintenance and operation dollars are hard to come by. They're not as easy to get as program money. So within 2, 3, 4 years of the plaza opening, they were already behind the 8 ball. They were in a huge deficit, $740,000 to be clear. So at that time is when the city said, okay, that's it, you're out, Mexican Heritage Corporation, you don't know what you're doing. And so they went out to bid, and now we have the School of Arts and Culture, which is doing a magnificent job. But here's what no one's told anybody. They get an annual subsidy still, 10 years after they've gotten here. The city either A, got smart and said, we need to help, or B, wanted to see the Mexican Heritage Corporation fail. I don't know the answer to that. That's going to take another historian to look at. But to me, it's those kind of things that you'll see throughout the book, Corina, about this sleight of hand, this pulling fast ones. And for 11 years, 12 years, the Mexican Heritage Corporation had to operate it under that environment. It was very challenging. So does that answer your question? Yeah, it's crazy. By the way, the Councilman Doan here is part of the group that's smart enough to continue providing some operations and maintenance costs for the School of Arts and Culture.
Good, gracias. Thank you, Mr. Garcia, for all your research and everything. You touched on an aspect that some of the information was false and so forth. How did you get to the truth, and how difficult was it to get that, peel those onions away? You know, I'm not only do I have a history degree, I'm a avid history and biography reader. And I want to give a lot of credit to my professor when I talked to her. Her name was Professor Irma Eichhorn. She passed away years ago. But she used to say, if a document exists, you can find it. If it doesn't exist, you're not going to find it. But if it exists, you got to find it. So you got to turn every page. So for example, Blanca's, I don't know if you all know this, but Blanca Alvarado's personal papers are at the San Jose State Special Collections. It's like 10 boxes of files. I literally sat there day after day, turning every single page to find out every nugget of information I can. Fernando Sasueta was the founding chairman of the Mexican Heritage Corporation. He said, he asked me the other day where should he donate his papers.